I never knew she's a virgin. Oh my God. I would have listened to her when she pleaded.
After their one-night stand, CEO saw the red on bedsheet. What happened next shocked him. Esteemed viewers, welcome to Luxurious True Life Stories. Please like and subscribe for more captivating luxury true stories. Let's get into the story. Jessica Williams woke before sunrise as usual. The house was still dark, but the list of chores waiting for her never slept. She swept the hallway, wiped the kitchen counters, and boiled water for tea. The heater barely worked, yet Vivian Charles would complain if the floor felt cold beneath her feet. Jessica moved quietly so she wouldn't wake Janet. Peaceful minutes before dawn were the only kindness she received each day. Vivian appeared from her bedroom wearing silk and oil ready. She inspected the table and clicked her tongue. A single cup slightly out of line was enough to trigger anger. Jessica apologized softly and adjusted it. Janet soon entered laughing on her phone, ignoring Jessica entirely. She grabbed breakfast and left the dishes behind. Vivian did not scold her own daughter, instead she handed the plate to Jessica to wash again. When the house finally emptied, Jessica allowed herself one moment. She touched the necklace around her neck and whispered a promise to endure one more day. She did not dream of wealth or luxury. She only wished for a place where she was not treated like a stranger in her own home. After finishing the morning chores, Jessica stepped outside to hang the laundry behind the house. The air was cold but calmer than the rooms inside. She held the necklace gently, rubbing its small silver pendant between her fingers. It was the only thing her mother left her, not money, not a house, just a promise that she would never be completely alone. Whenever the world felt heavy, she spoke to it quietly as if someone still listened. Vivian watched from the kitchen window. Her eyes were not soft like Jessica's. They calculated. The pendant shimmered under the sunlight, clearly not cheap. She asked casually when Jessica returned inside, pretending curiosity. Jessica answered honestly, explaining it was her mother's last gift. Vivian smiled in a way that never reached her eyes and told her to keep it safe. But inside, a plan had already begun forming. That evening Janet tried it on in front of the mirror without permission. She admired how elegant it looked against her dress and refused to remove it until Jessica asked politely several times. Janet tossed it back carelessly onto the bed. Jessica picked it up carefully and cleaned the fingerprint smudges away. She held it again, unaware that in the same house, two people were already thinking of how that necklace, and her life, could soon be taken from her. Across the city, morning sunlight reflected off the glass towers owned by Nathaniel Group. At the top floor stood Timothy Nathaniel, already awake after barely sleeping. His office was spotless, organized, and quiet, just the way he liked it. He reviewed reports quickly, signing documents without hesitation. Efficiency defined his life. Emotions did not. His assistant Daniel entered with coffee and the schedule packed with meetings, dinners, and a charity invitation Timothy had no intention of attending. Daniel had worked beside him for years and understood his habits well. Timothy avoided personal conversations and never allowed anyone too close. Relationships in his world lasted only hours, never days. He believed attachment complicated clear thinking. By evening Timothy stood before the city lights in his apartment, phone buzzing with messages he ignored. He selected one number, brief and familiar, arranging another temporary meeting for the night. For him it was routine, predictable, controlled, empty. He did not know that soon, for the first time, something would happen that his carefully ordered life could not explain or forget. That night Timothy joined a private dinner with a few long-time business associates. The restaurant was quiet, reserved only for members who valued privacy more than celebration. Laughter filled the table except from Timothy, who listened more than he spoke. One friend joked about settling down and asked when the famous CEO would finally choose a real partner instead of temporary company. Timothy answered calmly that permanence created weakness, and weakness ruined judgment. They challenged him, arguing that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. Timothy disagreed without raising his voice. To him, affection was simply a brief comfort people confused with necessity. He had seen marriages collapse around him, watched partners betray each other over money and pride. He trusted contracts, not promises. The conversation ended with amused disbelief, but Timothy's expression never changed. After dinner he left early, uninterested in after-party plans. The city streets were alive, yet distant to him. He arranged his usual late-night routine again, believing life would remain predictable. What he didn't realize was that before the week ended, a single unexpected encounter would quietly dismantle every belief he held about connection, choice, and memory. While Timothy's world remained controlled, Vivian's was collapsing. She sat at the dining table surrounded by unopened letters, each stamped with urgent notices. The money she borrowed months earlier for a failed investment had multiplied with interest. Calls from creditors no longer sounded polite. They demanded payment dates instead of giving them. Vivian hid the letters whenever Janet walked in, pretending everything remained stable. She tried selling jewelry and furniture, but it barely reduced the amount owed. Pride stopped her from admitting failure to anyone outside the house. That night she watched Jessica quietly repairing a torn curtain with careful stitches. The girl's patience irritated her, yet also sparked an idea. Vivian remembered how easily people trusted innocent faces and how men often paid generously for brief attention. Her eyes hardened with decision. Later she called Jessica into the living room and spoke gently for the first time in years, which immediately made Jessica uneasy. Vivian asked about her future plans, whether she intended to keep living in the house without contributing financially. The question carried weight Jessica did not understand yet. As she held her necklace nervously, Vivian concluded the conversation with a simple line: soon Jessica would need to help the family in a way she could not refuse. The next evening Vivian did not shout or insult her. Instead, she spoke with unusual patience, which frightened Jessica more than anger ever had. She explained the debts directly and said the family could lose the house within days. Jessica immediately offered to find another job, maybe two, but Vivian shook her head. What she needed could not be earned slowly. Vivian told her a wealthy client was willing to pay generously for one night of company. Jessica froze, thinking she misunderstood. When she realized she hadn't, she begged and refused repeatedly, her voice shaking. Janet stood nearby, silent but watching closely. Vivian's tone hardened. If Jessica rejected the arrangement, she would be thrown out that same night with nothing, no room, no food, no protection. Jessica clutched her necklace as tears fell uncontrollably. She pleaded for another solution, promising anything else. Vivian did not change her mind. The door behind Jessica suddenly felt temporary, as if she no longer belonged there. With nowhere to go and fear pressing around her, she slowly understood she had been cornered into a decision she never imagined facing. Night arrived colder than usual. Jessica walked slowly along unfamiliar streets, each step heavier than the last. The city lights blurred through her tears, and the sound of passing cars made her flinch. She had never stayed outside this late before. People stood along the roadside in bright clothing, speaking casually to strangers. She kept her distance, trembling, unsure where exactly she was supposed to stand. Minutes felt endless. She hugged her arms tightly, wishing she could disappear. Some people glanced at her confusion and quickly understood she did not belong there. A few tried speaking to her, but she only shook her head, unable to form words. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought others could hear it. She whispered apologies to her mother's necklace, asking forgiveness she felt she needed. Then a dark car slowed nearby. The door opened and a man stepped out, steady but clearly affected by alcohol. And like others, he did not smile or make casual remarks. He simply watched her quietly, noticing her fear instead of ignoring it. Jessica lowered her gaze, hoping he would leave. Instead, Nathaniel made a decision without understanding why he chose her. Timothy stood a few steps away, studying her silence. She didn't approach him like the others had earlier that night. She didn't even seem prepared to speak. Her hands trembled as she held the edge of her sleeve, and her eyes stayed lowered as if she hoped not to be noticed at all. That alone unsettled him. Normally everything about these encounters followed a predictable pattern: confidence, negotiation, indifference. None of that existed here. He asked a simple question, giving her space to refuse. Jessica tried to answer, but her voice barely formed sound. She nodded once instead, unable to explain anything. Timothy hesitated for the first time in years. Something about her hesitation suggested she was forcing herself forward rather than choosing to. Still, he opened the car door and waited. After a long pause, she stepped inside, clutching her necklace tightly. The drive remained quiet. Timothy did not attempt conversation, assuming silence was easier. Yet the quiet felt different tonight, not comfortable, not empty. He sensed unease beside him, fragile and unfamiliar. For reasons he could not name, he decided to keep everything calm and brief. Neither of them understood this ordinary decision would soon become the most unforgettable moment in both their lives. The apartment was quiet, overlooking distant city lights. Jessica stood near the entrance, unsure where to move or sit. Everything felt unreal: the soft lighting, the warmth, the silence without shouting. Timothy noticed her hesitation and spoke gently, telling her she could relax. His voice carried none of the impatience she expected. That only made her more nervous. Time passed slowly. Jessica tried to remain composed, but her hands shook and her eyes filled repeatedly. Timothy sensed the tension and paused more than once, uncertain why the atmosphere felt heavy instead of routine. He had experienced countless brief encounters, yet none carried this fragile stillness. The moment felt less like an arrangement and more like an interruption neither of them understood. Later, exhaustion overcame fear. Jessica drifted into uneasy sleep, clutching the necklace near her heart. Timothy remained awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling without knowing why he couldn't ignore what he felt. Eventually he slept as well, unaware that morning would reveal something capable of changing the direction of his carefully controlled life. Morning light slipped through the curtains, thin and quiet. Timothy woke first, head heavy from the previous night. For a moment, everything felt ordinary. Then his eyes shifted toward the bed. He noticed the faint red stain against the white sheet. He stared at it, confused, then fully awake within seconds. His breathing changed. The realization hit him slowly but firmly. She had not been experienced. The fear in her eyes, the trembling, the silence, it all made sense now. He sat up abruptly, turning toward the other side of the bed. It was empty. The door to the apartment was slightly open. She had left without a word. Timothy stood there longer than he expected to. Something inside him felt unsettled, not guilt exactly, but shock. He had assumed it was just another night. It clearly was not. As he moved to straighten the room, something small caught his attention on the bedside table. A silver necklace. He picked it up carefully, recognizing it from the night before. He didn't know her name, barely remembered her face clearly, but he knew one thing with certainty: she had not belonged there. And now she was gone. Timothy cancelled his morning meetings for the first time in years. Daniel was surprised but said nothing as Timothy kept the necklace in his hand, turning it slowly between his fingers. He couldn't explain why he felt responsible for finding her, only that leaving things unresolved bothered him more than any business problem ever had. He returned to the same street that evening. The people there had changed. Faces were unfamiliar. He described her briefly, but no one gave a clear answer. Some shrugged, others guessed randomly. Hours passed and the city grew colder. Timothy remained longer than he planned, watching every passerby carefully, hoping recognition would come naturally. It never did. Days turned into a quiet routine of searching without success. Eventually he stopped visiting, yet he didn't forget. The necklace stayed with him, inside his coat pocket, later his desk drawer. He ended his usual lifestyle without explanation. Even Danielle noticed the change but asked no questions. Timothy simply told himself that if fate intended him to see her again, it would happen without forcing it. Janet noticed the necklace the moment Timothy revealed it during a dinner weeks later. She had accepted his invitation through a social connection, never expecting anything serious. But when he placed the small silver pendant on the table, asking quietly if it belonged to her, she recognized it instantly. It was Jessica's. She had seen it countless times at home. For a brief second she hesitated. Then opportunity replaced honesty. She softened her voice and nodded carefully, pretending she had been too embarrassed to admit it before. Timothy watched her closely, relief replacing uncertainty. He didn't remember the girl's face clearly from that night, only fragments, a gentle touch, quiet fear, the necklace. Her answer fit the missing pieces he had been holding on to. Janet left the dinner smiling to herself. She never told her mother immediately, but her sudden expensive gift soon revealed the truth. Vivian quickly understood and supported the lie without hesitation. Neither of them worried about consequences. Jessica, unaware of any of this, still believed the night had vanished from the world the moment she walked away from that apartment door. Timothy began seeing Janet regularly after that night. He treated her differently from anyone before, calmer, patient, almost careful. He believed she was the same girl who had silently changed something inside him. He chose quieter restaurants, shorter meetings, and even postponed late office work just to spend evenings with her. Danielle noticed the change, but remained professionally silent. Janet quickly adapted to the role. She copied the gentle behavior she imagined Jessica would show, speaking softly and avoiding arguments. Gifts followed, dresses, jewelry, and support for Vivian's finances. Vivian encouraged her to maintain the act perfectly. To them it was security, not affection. Every time Timothy spoke sincerely, Janet responded with practiced warmth rather than real emotion. Despite his effort, Timothy still felt a faint mismatch he could not explain. The memory he carried felt softer than the person beside him. He blamed his unclear recollection and ignored the doubt. He told himself memories distort details. The necklace remained the only certainty he trusted, and since Janet claimed it, he forced his mind to accept the rest. At home, Vivian's patience with Jessica had ended. Now that Janet's position beside Timothy seemed secure, Jessica had become a risk. Vivian began criticizing every movement she made, inventing mistakes and accusing her of ingratitude. Janet avoided direct confrontation but never defended her. The atmosphere turned heavier each day until the house no longer felt livable. One afternoon Vivian packed Jessica's small belongings into a bag and placed it near the door. She claimed the family could no longer support someone who contributed nothing financially. Jessica pleaded quietly, offering to work longer hours outside, but Vivian refused to listen. The decision had already been made. The door closed behind her before sunset, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with nowhere certain to go. Night approached and the temperature dropped. Jessica walked until the streets blurred together, eventually resting near a small shelter in trance she could not enter because it was full. She held her necklace tightly and tried to remain hopeful. She never imagined that in another part of the city, the man connected to her most painful night was unknowingly spending his evenings with someone else who carried her identity. Days passed with little food and less rest. Jessica searched for any work she could find, visiting stores, cafes, and offices. Most places required experience she didn't have or references she couldn't provide. One morning she noticed a notice posted outside a tall corporate building, cleaning staff recruitment, immediate hiring. She hesitated at the entrance, nervous about being turned away again, but stepped inside anyway. The lobby was large and polished. Applicants sat in a quiet line holding simple forms. Jessica filled hers carefully, writing honestly about housework and repairs she had done for years. The supervisor appreciated her neat handwriting and calm answers. She was assigned a trial shift cleaning upper floors that evening. It was not a promise, but it was hope. As she followed another worker down the hallway carrying supplies, she never looked up at the company name engraved on the wall behind her. She only focused on doing the job well enough to keep it. She did not know she had just walked into the building owned by Nathaniel, the one man she believed she would never meet again. Late that evening, Timothy walked through the quiet hallway after a long meeting. Most employees had already left, leaving only soft footsteps and distant cleaning sounds. He barely paid attention at first, until someone turned the corner carrying a bucket and cloth. He stopped immediately. The girl froze as well. For a brief second neither moved. Something about her presence felt familiar in a way he could not ignore. The posture, the hesitation, even the way she avoided eye contact. Yet it made no sense. Janet had been with him hours earlier. Still, this face stirred a memory he could never clearly recall. He stepped closer, studying her carefully. Jessica lowered her gaze, worried she had broken some rule. Timothy's thoughts refused to settle. The resemblance unsettled him enough that he quietly asked her to come with him to his office. She followed nervously, unaware that the moment both their lives had avoided for weeks had finally arrived. Inside the office, Jessica stood near the door holding her cleaning gloves tightly. The room felt too formal, too silent. Timothy closed the door gently, not wanting to frighten her, but his expression remained serious. He studied her face again, searching for certainty his memory could not provide. He opened a drawer and placed the silver necklace on the desk. Jessica gasped softly before she could stop herself. Her hand instinctively reached toward it but paused halfway. Timothy noticed immediately. He asked where she had gotten it. After a long hesitation, she explained it belonged to her, lost weeks ago after a night she wished to forget. She also mentioned she had a stepsister who looked very similar to her. Timothy showed her a photo of Janet on his phone. Jessica confirmed quietly. The room went still. Every doubt he ignored now aligned perfectly. The gentle memory he carried did not belong to the woman he had been seeing. The truth settled heavily between them, and Timothy finally understood he had trusted the wrong person all along. Timothy did not wait. He asked Jessica to remain in the office and called Janet immediately, requesting she come over with Vivian under the excuse of an urgent matter. His voice sounded calm, but the silence in the room revealed the storm beneath it. Jessica sat quietly, unsure whether to leave or stay, clutching her hands together. When they arrived, Janet smiled confidently, assuming another pleasant visit. Vivian followed, equally relaxed. The moment Timothy placed the necklace on the desk and Jessica stepped forward, their expressions broke. Janet tried to speak first, but Timothy stopped her. He asked only one question: why she claimed something that was never hers. Neither could answer quickly enough. The truth unfolded without shouting. Jessica explained the forced night, the house, the threats. Vivian's excuses sounded empty against her trembling voice. Timothy's disappointment was sharper than anger. He ended the relationship immediately and instructed them to leave. For the first time, the lie that benefited them collapsed completely, and neither could repair it. The office felt quieter after the door closed behind them. Timothy stood still for a moment before turning toward Jessica. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by careful sincerity. He explained everything: how he searched for her, how he believed Janet, and how the necklace was the only thing he remembered clearly. He did not try to defend himself, only to be honest. Jessica listened silently. The pain of the past weeks remained, yet she recognized his confusion had been real. He apologized directly for that night and for unknowingly allowing someone else to take her place in his life. The words were simple but steady. For the first time, she felt she was being seen rather than misunderstood. He offered her a proper position in the company instead of temporary cleaning work, assuring her it was her effort he respected, not pity. Jessica accepted quietly. The tension between them softened into something calm, not rushed, not forced. Both understood trust would grow slowly, but this time it would grow honestly. Weeks passed with a gentler rhythm. Jessica adjusted to her new role, learning office routines and gaining confidence each day. Employees respected her sincerity, and Daniel often guided her patiently. Timothy kept a respectful distance at first, allowing comfort to form naturally instead of pressing closeness. Their conversations remained simple but genuine. One evening after work he asked her to walk with him outside the building. There was no luxury setting, only the quiet street and steady lights above them. He told her he no longer wanted a life built on temporary moments. He wanted something chosen carefully, and he wanted to start it with her, if she wished the same. Jessica did not answer immediately. She looked at the necklace now safely around her neck, then at him. The fear that once surrounded their meeting no longer existed. She nodded softly. What began from confusion and pain ended in understanding. Together they stepped forward, leaving the past where it belonged and beginning a life neither expected but both accepted. As this story comes to an end, remember that behind every luxury lies a truth few ever see. If this story moved you, support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until the next unforgettable true story, stay inspired and stay curious.